And I had this moment where I was at the airport just by myself. I don't remember where I was going, but in front of me in the security line, there was this lesbian couple. And they were about my age, and they were holding each other, and they were laughing, and they were talking, and they were just looking at each other and smiling. And it was beautiful. I just felt their energy of just love and care and support for each other. And at that same time, I was miserable in my heterosexual Mormon still sort of marriage, the thing I was supposed to do. I was miserable. And I saw them connect, and it just was, I want that. I'm jealous. They love each other. There's no way that's wrong. There's no way God hates them. There's no way.
Welcome to Grain Rainbows, the podcast community for people coming out LGBT plus later in life. I'm your host, Dr. Ginger Campbell. For more episodes of Grain Rainbows, please visit my website at grainrainbows.com or subscribe in your favorite podcasting app. You can send me email at grainrainbows@gmail.com or submit voice feedback at speakpipe.com/Doc Artemis. Grain Rainbows also has a Facebook community, and I'll tell you more about that later. My guest today is Shelly Johnson from the Latter Day Lesbian podcast. Her story is powerful and inspiring, so let's jump right into the interview. Okay, my guest today is Shelly Johnson from Latter Day. All of a sudden, my mind went blank.
Latter Day Lesbian. I'll help you out.
Okay, thank you. Shelly, would you like to start just by telling us your story?
Sure. How many days do you have? It's a lot, but I will shorten it for the listeners. I was born and raised Mormon. I got married young because when you're Mormon, as a Mormon woman, that's what you're told that you are put on this earth to do, is to get married and have babies. And so I did that. I got married young. I had 7 kids with my husband, ex-husband now. He and I eventually left the Mormon church when I was 40 years old. And at that point, I came out of the closet, told him, hey, I'm gay. And we got divorced. I ended up dating online, met my girlfriend, Mary, and we fell in love, started a podcast. So that is the teeny tiny nutshell right there.
Okay, I need a longer version.
Where do you want me? Where do you want, what interests?
Well, when you said you were young when you got married, what do you mean by that? What age was that?
So I was not, in my teens. I was 22, but I was taught my entire life, like, this is what you do. This is your only option. There's no, you get married, you drop out of college if you're in college, and you have babies. There was just no option for me. And the household that I grew up in was very patriarchal, just like the Mormon church is very patriarchal. My dad was kind of the head of the household. The buck stops here. He makes all the decisions. And I have 3 older brothers, and they're all very much the same way, very macho, very just better than all the girls. And my mom is very quiet, timid, no opinion, does whatever the men say. And so that was what I saw growing up. That was the example set for me. And I'm not, like, my spirit is not that kind of person. I'm very outgoing. I'm very, I want to have my own ideas and my own plans in life. But I knew that the Mormon church was the one true church because that's what I was told my entire life. The people that I looked up to were all Mormons, my dad, my mom, my grandparents. And so I believed whatever they said. And so when they tell me the church is true, then you know that this is my only path. They like to say, well, you choose to be Mormon, you choose to get baptized, you choose to get married. You kind of don't, because here's your choice. On one end, you can do what makes God happy, your parents happy, you get eternal life, you get to be with your entire family forever and ever and ever, everything's wonderful. Or you can choose not to be Mormon, and basically you're damned to hell, and you've disappointed your entire family, and they're crying for the rest of their lives over the loss of you for eternity. So
Not really a choice.
Not really a choice. And I didn't want to disappoint people. I wanted my dad to be proud of me, which was something that was very hard to achieve because I was a girl. He's very sexist. My mom's very helpless. He does everything for her. I remember actually when my husband and I moved across the country out here to Virginia, and I opened a bank account. And I remember talking to my dad about it. And he said, well, how did you learn how to open a bank account? I was 30. And he was surprised that as a woman, I knew how to open a bank account. You're taught to just do what the men say. You're not important. You don't have the priesthood. You don't get to make choices. You are basically a breeder. Get married young, have babies, and stay at home. Don't get a job. That's what you're supposed to do. And I ended up at Brigham Young University. I played 2 years of college basketball, which should have kind of been a clue that I was gay, but I didn't know. Looking back, when I came out of the closet at age 43, looking back, it was like, oh my gosh, there's so many signs. If I would have been raised in any other household that wasn't Mormon, a household that talked about alternative lifestyles, if that's what we call them, I would have recognized it at like age 12, maybe age 13, 14. But as a young Mormon, it just wasn't a thing. You know, I remember having an experience in 6th grade. I was in the cafeteria lunch line, and there was another lunch line on the other side of the cafeteria, and there was a girl, and she was looking at me. And in my mind, I took that as she was looking at me because she thought I was attractive. And that felt really good to me. And it kind of made me stand up a little taller and sort of watch how I walked. And I felt like being a little bit masculine in that moment. That's a total clue, but it didn't even cross my mind that I could be gay because it wasn't even talked about. It wasn't even a thing. There was not an option. There was another incident with a best friend of mine when I was must have been high school because I was driving. And I was staying the night at her house. We were best friends. We spent every minute together. I just adored her. We were sleeping in the same bed together, and she just had put her foot on my calf and was just kind of like moving a foot around, sort of tickling my calf. It wasn't anything sexual. It was just kind of just laying there and talking like you think that girls do. But in my mind, it was like, and my entire soul felt like, oh my gosh, just don't ever stop doing that. I just want to keep feeling these butterflies and this connection and this overwhelming feeling of just connection and excitement. And it was something that I didn't feel with boys, looking back with my husband, like never. But again, it just wasn't an option. It didn't cross my mind that I could be gay. Anyway, so I ended up at Brigham Young University. And when I was there, it was like, everyone's getting married. I didn't necessarily want to get married, but it was like, well, my early 20s, it's time. I need to get married. I need to have babies. I need to get married in the temple because then you promise all these things to God and you're eternal, blah, blah, blah. And I needed to do that because I needed my dad to be proud of me. And that was the only way it was going to happen. Interestingly enough, though, I never doubted the truthfulness of the Mormon Church. I never researched it. I never used any kind of intelligent thought to think about, is this true? Is it not? It just was because that was my upbringing. There was nothing else. I didn't love it. I didn't enjoy things in the church. I didn't like the patriarchy. I always felt dumb. I've always felt like a stupid little girl. No matter how old I got, I felt like a stupid little girl. And especially with teachings of polygamy, one man, multiple wives, that's what happens in heaven when you're a Mormon. That's what you're taught. And that teaching hurt me, but I never considered it was wrong. I just knew that that's what God wanted. And so I felt like God didn't really like girls. So the whole thing just really messed me up. Got to BYU. I'm of marrying age. I meet a guy. We work together. I'm not attracted to him. I mean, he's handsome, I guess, but it's not like I want to be around him. But he looked good on paper. And I knew that my dad would approve. He came from a long line of Mormons as well. And so it was going to look good on paper. And you're promised, you follow these steps, you're going to be happy. Get married in the temple, have babies. You're going to be happy. Like, this is what God has put you here for. And so I was waiting to be happy. So I did these things, had these 7 kids, and was never really happy. Just was empty. And it felt like I was building this big wall around me, this big wall that looked beautiful on the outside. And so everyone in church would look at me and Brent, my ex, and you look at Shelly and Brent and all their kids, all these 7 wonderful Mormon kids, and they're always in the front row at church with their white shirts and ties and their hair combed to the side and ponytails, and they wanted to be us. We were the couple in our congregation that people wanted to be, that people looked up to. And I kept this front of being always happy and always on top of things and went to every church meeting and volunteered, like did everything that I was supposed to do to be happy. And inside I was dying. I was depressed. I was lonely. I wasn't in love. It just sucked. It was the most lonely time, being surrounded by all of my church people and feeling lonely. So my husband and I was 40 and he was 41, and he was doing some research in the church. There were some things that he didn't agree with, and he kind of wanted to take a break from church. And I was relieved. I said, sure, yeah, whatever you do. Again, following my husband, whatever he says, I do. And we did that. And that was so good for me, because the more I stepped away from the church, the more I felt like, exhale a little bit. We're not going every Sunday anymore, just every other Sunday. Exhale a little bit more. Just the stress and the pressure of having to be this perfect family in this congregation. We ended up leaving the church completely, probably 2 years in from our first questioning. And there's a whole podcast episode about that. Like multiple, because there was a lot to it. But as far as coming out of the closet, when we quit going to church, I started making friends outside of the Mormon church. And I found myself, when I was in the church, I was taught that being gay was evil and wicked, and the gay agenda is out to destroy the traditional family that God approves of, and it'll be the end of the world as we know it. I was really taught these things, and I believed them because I was taught that. It was almost like I was raised to hate myself. Like I was never going to come to terms with who I was when I was hating who I was. When we were leaving the church, I started making friends outside of the church at the gym and stuff, and they were gay. And they were nice. And they had partners that they loved. They had kids sometimes, and they were just good people. And it was this time of like, well, maybe God doesn't hate gay people. Maybe this isn't this horrible thing. And then I kind of started to feel bad for things that I had said about gay people, just sort of regurgitating what I had heard in church. And I had this moment where I was at the airport just by myself. I don't remember where I was going, but in front of me in the security line, there was this lesbian couple, and they were about my age, and they were holding each other, and they were laughing, and they were talking, and they were just looking at each other and smiling. And it was beautiful. I just felt their energy of just love and care and support for each other. And at that same time, I was miserable in my heterosexual Mormon still sort of marriage, the thing I was supposed to do. I was miserable. And I saw them connect, and it just was, I want that. I'm jealous. They love each other. There's no way that's wrong. There's no way God hates them. There's no way. It was really within days after letting myself accept that God is okay with gay people. And when I say gay, I mean LGBTQ+. I don't mean to just say gay, but you know what I mean. When I let that hate out of my heart, it was within days that I found myself being attracted to women. I would kind of catch myself staring at someone at the gym, and it wasn't staring at a woman's body. I mean, obviously there was some of that too, but it was like, I want to be right next to her, and I want to know everything about her, and I want to tell her everything about me, and I want to sit right next to her so that our legs touch, and I could feel her energy, and we could just talk about everything. It just was this thing that I had not felt with my husband or with a man at all, and all these feelings and emotions going on in me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm gay. I think I'm gay. And I had 2 friends at the time, very close friends, both girls. And it was, again, like I just wanted to spend every second with them. And nothing sexual. I just wanted them to be in my space and feel that energy. And there was one night that I was out partying with these girls and having a great time. And then I came back home to my husband. He was asleep in bed already, and he was laying on top of the covers. And he's a good-looking guy. He works out. He was laying on top of the covers in just his underwear. And I came and I stood next to him, and I just stared at him. And I was just saying like, oh God, I just want to feel something. Let me feel something. I want to feel attracted, a connection, an energy, anything. Please, please, please let me feel something for him. And it was just empty. and nothing. And I went in my bathroom and I sat down and I just cried. I cried and cried because I had already made the decision that I would stay with him and I would just have a mediocre life pretending to love someone that I didn't and never be able to really feel that connection that I was feeling with these women that I was meeting. It was horrible. It was a horrible thing. It was like, well, okay, this is it. For my kids and for him, I'm just gonna have a mediocre life and get that energy from just my friends when I can. And that's all that it's going to be. Thankfully, he and I started arguing a lot after that, and it just sort of spiraled down. And we ended up having that big fight that just ends it all. And we separated. In that time, he asked me, well, are you going to date women? Or are you going to date men? And I just decided I was going to date everybody. I didn't care. I was just wanting to be free. And I was going to date men and I was going to date women and do all these things. And I moved into a little apartment and I put an ad on Match.com. And my bio was seriously like a train wreck. I still don't know how my girlfriend even wanted to reply to it. It basically said, help me. I was raised in a cult. Think I might be gay. I don't know what to do. I'm freaking out. I'll probably delete this right after I post it. And she saw it and she replied and it just said, it's going to all be okay. In that moment, it was like, oh, I've never heard that. I've never felt that. I've never felt like it was all going to be okay. It was just this instant connection with her. So my friends joke now like, oh yeah, you were going to be single and do everything. And you were single for about 24 hours. That was really it. I didn't sow my wild oats and I'm happy that I didn't. Quick funny story. The first time we actually met was going to be at a bar and I wasn't out of the closet yet publicly. And I wasn't even completely I was out of the church, but there were still people in my neighborhood that didn't know. And so I was still just very on the down low about my entire life. And we were going to meet at a bar and I was so nervous because I had never met a woman face to face as a lesbian, yeah, you're going, I know. It was so new for me. And so I got to the bar early and I was freaking out. I was actually going to cancel the whole thing because I didn't know what to do. And I got there early, chugged a beer. We'd been texting for probably 2 weeks before we met in person. And I saw her come up the street and it was first, whew, okay, she's cute. Okay, all right. Because you just don't know. I was panicking about everything. And she came and she sat down next to me. And, a little bit of small talk. And then she said, well, I'm going to run to the restroom real quick. And so when she was in the restroom, I was just panicking and I got my phone and I texted her while she was in the restroom. And I said, will you please just stay in there and text with me for a while? I'm too nervous. I can't handle this. and she said, sure, of course. But then she came right out and she's like, it's fine. It's going to be okay. We sat and we talked and I stayed nervous the whole time. And there was a moment where she kind of put her knee against my knee while we were talking and put her hand on my leg for a second, just telling a story. And it was the butterflies and the heart racing and, oh my gosh, there's a woman and she touched my leg and so much energy that I'd never felt. And I'm 43 years old, never felt any of this stuff. It was just life-changing. And at the end of the date, I asked her if I could walk her to her car, which was huge for me because as a kid, I always wanted to do those things. I always wanted to open a door for a girl. I wanted to help girls. I wanted to give a girl my coat. All these things that I didn't understand why I wanted to do them. And I finally got to say, hey, can I walk you to your car? And she said, sure. And it was, oh my gosh, I'm going to walk a girl to her car. Oh my gosh, this is insane. This feels so right and so good. And as we're walking to the car, I started to panic because I had never kissed a woman. And I knew Mary was a career lesbian, like she had always been one. And so my mind is racing like, oh my gosh, she's going to want to kiss me. That's what they do. I'm not ready. What if someone sees? And I just started panicking. And as we got up to her car, she said, that's my car right there. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to keep walking. And I just left her in the dust, hauled off to the stoplight, turned right and just ran to my car in the parking garage because I just completely panicked. And I texted her and apologized. And she was, it's fine. It's okay. And So she's been this wonderful person in my life, just helping me be okay with it, with me being a mess right now. As I started telling her about my life, being raised Mormon, the ex-husband, the 7 kids, the whole thing, the patriarchy, all this mess of mine that I didn't know was that much different than anyone else's. I started telling her about it and she kept saying, oh my gosh, you have a story that needs to get out. You need to tell this story. We didn't know how it was going to come out. It ended up being a podcast, and we started that about 9 months ago. Really just for me to be able to get my story out, kind of to heal from everything, the trauma. But it has turned into this safe place for other people who have gone through the same thing. I had no idea. I thought I was the only one dealing with this. And we start the podcast and suddenly we're getting hundreds of letters from other people, ex-Mormon, ex-Jehovah's Witness, ex-Southern Baptist, ex-anything that's very patriarchal, very, you know what I mean? People saying, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one. You make me feel like I'm not alone. And so we started reading people's letters and we just created this community of people who thought they were the only ones, and now they know they're not. And so helping people to heal and share stories. I know you're going to ask this really quickly, just so everyone knows. My ex-husband and I now are good friends. He's got a girlfriend. She's fantastic. He thinks Mary's awesome. We all get along. He lives about 8 minutes away from me. He has the big house, so the kids stay there. They sleep there most of the time, but I see them every day, once or twice. We go on family vacations together still. It really is the best situation that I never knew that I wanted and needed. Yeah, that's the bigger nutshell.
I want to take a moment to mention how you can become a more active member of the Grain Rainbows community. We have a public Grain Rainbows Facebook fan page where you will see a link to our private Facebook group. That's where you can share among yourselves. Also, I am looking for listeners who are willing to share their stories. If you want to share your story, please email me at grainrainbows@gmail.com. You can come on the show or you can share your story anonymously, whatever's best for you. Finally, I want to thank those of you who have been supporting the show via Patreon. If you're interested in helping support Grain Rainbows, just go to patreon.com/Grain Rainbows. A lot of the people that listen to this show are still in that not quite out place. Some of them are struggling with faith issues, which is one reason why I wanted you on the show and want them to know about your show. And then the others have to do with family and especially kids. So can you talk a little bit about how you handled, how old are your kids and how that went?
Sure. So my oldest is 19. It goes 19, 17, 15, 12, 10, 8, and 6. The hardest was telling the kids that we were separating. That was hard, of course. I think that's the hardest of all of it. The being gay is less traumatic for sure. I was nervous telling the kids that I was gay. I think only because my ex-husband, kept saying, you're going to traumatize the kids. I need to be there when you tell them. You're going to traumatize them. And so I was so afraid that I was going to traumatize the kids. But I thought, you know what? No, this is my story. This is not his story. I'm the one who's gay. And so I told them without him being there, and he got over it. He was fine eventually. But I sat down with my older kids, the 4 oldest, and I think Genevieve was 14 at the time, maybe 13. They were all teenagers. I said, listen, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to think I'm joking, but I'm not. I am actually gay. I've always been gay. I wasn't allowed to be gay because of the church. And I gave this short explanation. They just were like, okay, cool. All right. And so then we were going to go to the movies together, all of us. And so we got in the car and we're driving in the car. We're listening to their rap music that they want to listen to. And they're all singing along. And I'm just thinking, oh, they're hiding their emotions. They're traumatized. They have to be. And so I turned off the music and I said, guys, do you want to talk about this? I mean, like, I'm gay. Do you want to talk about it? This is some news. And they were like, we're fine, Mom. Turn the music back on. So I turned the music back on, and eventually I'm thinking, no, this can't be. I know they're traumatized. So I shut it off one more time and I'm like, kids, can we talk? And my son Gavin says, do you mean about your gayness? I said, yes, I mean about my gayness. Are you guys okay? Are you like, do you want to go to therapy or anything? What can I do for you? And they said, Mom, you're not an axe murderer. You're just gay. It's no big deal. So okay, I guess it's no big deal, but when I was a teenager, that would have been a huge deal back in the 80s and 90s. But kids these days, thankfully, are more open and more accepting. And it was huge help that we had left the church a few years before. I think I know had we stayed in the Mormon church, they would have had a much bigger problem with it, because the teaching in the Mormon church is that it's evil, wicked. You just make it up in your head. It's because you want to have this basic sex, and it's just this horrible, horrible thing. But we weren't brainwashing them with that anymore. So it's awesome. It felt good to tell them that secret, because I had felt like I had been lying to them. And the fact that I shared that with them, they felt very honored that I would share that with them, that I would trust them with it. And it brought us closer. I think when you share something that's very difficult with people, it brings you closer. It's like, I'm being vulnerable here. I'm trusting you with information. I'm trusting you with my heart. And they feel that you're being vulnerable, and it's an honor to them.
So what about the 3 younger ones?
The 4 younger ones?
Okay. I thought you said 4. Okay. Sorry. I know you've got 7. I just lost track of which.
I lose track as well. The 3 older ones I told.
Okay. I thought it was 4. Okay.
No, I probably misspoke. I told the next one, Simon, when he was probably 11, and he cried only because any kind of emotion, he cries. It doesn't matter, happiness, sadness, any sort of change. He's a very emotional kid. But we talked about it, and I said, is there something wrong? He said, no, it was just a big change for him. And he's been great as well. The younger kids, like the youngest 2, we've just had talks like, what do you think about boys and boys and girls and girls? And they're just innocent. They don't really care. They've all met Mary at this point. They all think she's fantastic. And so it's a huge help that I still have Mary in my corner, and they love her. They think she's great. So I think it's hard for them to think that gay is wrong when my partner is wonderful. The little ones will say weird things from time to time. Like the other day, the 6-year-old goes, "Okay, Mom, so Mary's not actually a boy, right?" Like, no, she's a girl. It's just questions, and you just give them honest answers, and you show them love, and you show love to your partner, and you show kindness and respect and love to their father. And they just see love. And so they don't really judge where the love is going. Does that make sense? It just all feels like good love to them.
Right. And what you said about the breaking up the marriage is what really hurts kids. I mean, I think that's what I've heard from everybody. That's what kids care about.
Of course, they don't. No kids, I won't say no, because I'm sure there's some kids that can't stand their mom or their dad or whatever, but no kids that I know want their parents to split up. And it was hard for them at first, but now as they get older and they understand more the situation, I've had good conversations with my older kids about it. And they'll tell me, no, I'm so much happier now that you and Dad are divorced. There's no more arguing. I see that you're happy. Just as much as we want our kids to be happy, our kids want us to be happy too. Yeah, kids are selfish or whatever, but as they get older, they want their parents to be happy. They want to see their parents smile and be happy. And if they're not doing that together, they would rather have their parents happy apart. I think it's helped immensely that their dad and I were still really good friends. There's no fights. There's no weird custody battles. We've kept it very clean for them. That's been huge. The first year was probably a little rocky, just getting used to being split up and not really knowing what I was going to do. Here I am, newly divorced at age 42 at the time, no college education, no life experience except for birthing kids and being a Mormon, starting this whole new world of being gay and not understanding really anything. I mean, I still have gay slurs going through my mind. It was hard. And the kids, I'm sure, sensed my anxiety over my life. And so, the first year was a little rough. We did our very best. I spent as much time with the kids as I could. We went on some family vacations together still, just so it was like a slower process. But really the key, I think, was for Brent and I to remain friends. And that's not always possible. I really do think that I am so lucky in this situation. It could be so much worse. For example, if Brent had decided to stay in Mormonism, that would have been horrible. It wouldn't have worked. It would have been so bad. So I really feel lucky to be where I'm at.
So You want to tell us a little bit more about your podcast? You mentioned it, but...
Absolutely. The podcast has basically taken over our lives.
Well, that's what podcasting does.
That's exactly what they do. Again, when we first started it, and if any of your listeners decide to listen, I hope they will, but they'll see at the beginning, the first few episodes, I'm a little nervous. I don't really know what we're doing. It ends up becoming this beautiful symphony, in my opinion, as it goes along, because confidence comes from understanding that you're helping people. And this is something I had also never experienced. I never thought that my story mattered. I didn't even think I had a story, when I realized that there was a story, I didn't think people would care because I didn't know. You only know your story when you're raised in such a small, cultish religion. And so as I started telling my story, and then people started reaching out and saying, oh my gosh, your story breaks my heart. I have a similar story. And I thought it was only me. I'm going to have my girlfriend listen. She's never been Mormon and I'm ex-Mormon. And if she listens, maybe she'll understand me better. And it just became this thing that we'd get hundreds of letters. And then I would, Mary and I would sit and read them and cry and say, oh my gosh, like we're doing something that matters. We're actually helping people. To have we had a teenage boy write in recently and say, I'm 14 years old, young kid, 14 years old. I'm a Mormon. My entire family's Mormon. I live in Utah. I'm gay. I know I'm gay. I'm afraid to tell anyone because I know the consequences if I do. And I've recently been having suicidal thoughts because I just don't think it's worth it. I don't want the consequences of coming out of the closet, and I don't know how else to live. But I came across your podcast and I've been listening, and I'm starting to feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I can make it through. And we just formed a friendship with this kid and put him in connection with places in Utah that help the LGBTQ youth out in this very Mormon state. And we check back in with him from time to time. He says, I'm doing so much better. I've been talking about my feelings. I'm getting braver. I know when I'm 18, I can do what I want. And it just feels good. It feels like I can take my story of abuse and listen to the podcast. It's abuse. I can take that story, that ugliness, that heartache, and use it to help other people get out of their heartache quicker than I did, to realize that they're not alone and that there is hope and you can be gay. You can stand up for yourself. You can. You're not alone. One thing that I talk to people about a lot is that the decision to come out of the closet, it's like flipping a domino. And you don't get to decide what lands where. You don't get to decide how fast the dominoes go down. These are all the people in your life that are going to react. And you know what? That's on them now. You did the hardest thing by flicking the domino, and I can just sit back and let them do what they want with the information because it's not about you anymore. Meaning they get to react how they get to react and you can't control it. And that's a relief that you can't control their reactions because you did what you needed to do. And that's the hardest part, is flicking over that first domino, whether it's the domino of coming out, whether it's the domino of divorce, the domino of leaving your religion, all things that are so hard. And when you're staring, I imagine you're in like a huge gymnasium and there's this first domino and there's thousands of dominoes that are going to be touched with your first flick, and you don't know what's going to happen, but you know you need to do it. And once you do it, I'm telling you, it's so much better on the other side when all the dominoes have fallen. I look back when I had that moment of crying on the floor of my bathroom because I was going to stay with my husband and I knew I was gay. I can't believe I was going to stay. I can't believe I was going to just be mediocre my whole life, because here on the other side now, I'm so happy. Even on my worst day, it's better because I know I'm choosing what I get to do. And I know tomorrow I get to wake up and choose what I'm going to do again. Where when I was Mormon and gay and trying to live up to this thing that I didn't get to choose. I was just pretending. And now I do whatever I want. I get to decide what career I want. I get to decide who I love. I get to decide if I'm going to drink coffee, like the dumbest, littlest things. I finally get to decide for myself. And there's so much power in that. It feels amazing. And I wish that I could tell your listeners and my listeners who haven't flipped over the domino yet. It feels so good on the other side. It's not easy. It's not perfect. It's not without heartbreak, but it's just so worth it. You couldn't pay me enough to go back sitting on the floor in the bathroom crying and deciding to stay in that situation. I would rather just not be around.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing your story. It's very powerful. What about the journey would you say, looking back, is the biggest surprise?
The biggest surprise would probably be how my parents have actually come around. I'm still to this day shocked because, again, my dad and my mom were both raised in the church, in the Mormon church, like strict. Those are the people that I learned from that being a homosexual was Satan's plan. Those are the people that taught me you get married young, you have babies, that's what you do. And probably a few months before I came out of the closet officially, I remember my dad and I on the phone, and he was complaining something about Obama's, or he calls him Obama. I mean, my dad is that right-wing Republican guy, right? Complaining that Obama had approved like a new general in the army that was a lesbian. And now this lesbian general is going all over DC with her wife. I mean, he was just really talking disgusting about, and inside I'm going, oh my gosh, he's going to lose his mind when I come out to him. And when I did come out to him, there was a lot of, well, we know you had some things happen to you when you were a child, and it's probably all. I'm like, no, Dad, I'm not gay because I was abused. Well, it's okay to have same-sex attraction as long as you don't act on it. And I said, no, Dad, do you really want me to sit in this one-bedroom apartment for the rest of my life lonely because I'm not allowed to be gay because of the church? I mean, it was hard. And my mom was crying, and in their mind, they're losing their daughter, they're losing their grandkids because we're no longer Mormon. It was just a big mess. I started talking to them about Mary because it was not long after that I met Mary, and I would bring up her name and they would change the subject instantly. Then I started saying, oh, well, me and my girlfriend Mary are taking the kids camping, and they would change the subject. Oh, so you're camping. Okay. But it was never about Mary. They never even said her name. We'd been together for quite a while. And I just started getting frustrated that they would never acknowledge her. And so one day when they called on the phone, I said, you know what? I have brought up my girlfriend to you on every phone conversation we've had, and you have never, ever asked about her. You've never asked where she works. You don't even say her name out loud. If this would have been a man, like a new boyfriend, would you ask? Is it because you're Mormon and you think that if you mention anything about me being gay that you think I approve, that you approve? I know you don't approve. But if you can't acknowledge her, that she's part of my life, don't bother calling. This is important to me. And I think that made them really stop and think about, oh, wow, we might lose our daughter over this. And then they started really making efforts after that. And it seemed very forced at first. It was very, oh, so what's her name again? It was hard for them. They're very old school. And I know it was just trying to just break out of this super tight thing. And they would say things like, oh, we're sending some money for you and Brent to take the kids out, my ex-husband, right? I mean, it was never anything about Mary, but they came out and they met her, and they were very nice to her. And we actually were in Utah recently, and we went and visited them. Hearing back from my mom later, she was so nervous to have Mary and I in their house together, like, letting in a gay couple. Oh my gosh, like the place might light on fire kind of thing. And I said, well, how was it for you, Mom? And she goes, well, you're just like a normal couple. I said, well, yeah, Mom, we're just a normal couple. When we were leaving the driveway, she leaned into the car and she gave me a hug and she said, I really like that Mary. I really like her. I like that she makes you happy. And it was huge for me because my mom was so freaked out, and she just realized like, oh, well, my daughter loves her and she loves my daughter. And then my birthday was next, and my dad always sends me a gift card. And usually it's like, you and Brent go out, or you and the kids, after we were divorcing. And he called and he said, I just want you to know that there's a gift card in the mail to this taco place down the street from you. And I just want you and Mary to go out and have a nice lunch. And so he put us together as a unit. And it was like, wow. Yeah, my biggest surprise would be my parents They're still Mormon. They still believe how they believe, but how they've just been nice and accepting and kind. I didn't see that coming, and it feels so good. And it's made me love them more, because I was pretty bitter for a while, the way they were treating the entire situation. And now to realize how hard it must have been for them to get to this point, I have so much more respect and love and consideration for them, for sure.
And it sounds like a potential lesson in there is that someone doesn't have to change what they believe in order to come to some kind of acceptance. It would not be realistic for them to change their beliefs.
No, and I actually wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want them to leave the Mormon church. They've been that their entire lives. They would be lost. This is everything to them. So the fact that they can keep that everything, and then also say, you and Mary are welcome to come stay at our house anytime. Whoa, like that's, because my dad would never even allow a gay person in his home, period. But to invite his daughter and her girlfriend to come stay with them overnight in their home, like that's, it's just unbelievable. And he still believes how he believes, but he loves me.
Yeah, and I think that is the reason why, and this was truer 20 years ago maybe than it is now, that there's this, in the activist circle, this belief that it's important for people to come out so that people will know that LGBT people are just people. We've still got all these people who think they don't know any trans people.
Right. You know what? That's funny. Not funny. It's interesting because I'm learning that myself through the podcast. I've met a few trans people. We've had a trans guest on the show, and it's been eye-opening to me. And like, oh, wait, you're normal people. Like I can be in that position too, someone who's not like me. And then I realize, oh, you're just a normal person.
So is there anything else you'd like to share before we close?
I hope that your listeners can find the courage to live their own life. It's scary. It's scary breaking away, especially when you're old at 40 something, starting over, brand new lesbian at 43. It's never too late to go after your dreams and to be yourself. You owe it to yourself. You're worth it. I hope that your listeners will tune in to our podcast, Latter Day Lesbian. You can find it on any podcast app. LatterDayLesbian.org is our website. LATTER. It's like the Latter-day Saints or the Mormons. It's Latter Day Lesbian. We have a great Facebook page. You can find me on Facebook, Shelly Johnson, all except your friend requests. We talk about a lot of things,
Plus, you have a great sense of humor. My show doesn't have any humor, but yours certainly does.
We laugh. We do get a little irreverent. We have a good time because what I've realized is sometimes laughing at the things that I went through, it takes away the power from that abuse. I don't really know how to explain it, but we definitely have so many listeners that say, thank you for making me angry, making me laugh, that making me crack up more than I have in my entire life, all in a 1 hour show. I love it. I love that I can feel all the things and heal from this trauma and then laugh and just be human again. We have a great community. We do good things. I'm going to be going to a march in October to stand up against child abuse within organized religion. There's a lot that we are supporting and doing there. I feel like it's time to give back. I feel like I am so lucky to be where I am that I just want to grab everyone else's hands and pull them out of their situation and give them a leg up and help them to get out of their mess and just be happy and be free.
Fantastic. So, have you thought about writing a book?
Yes.
Because I know just the person to help you if you haven't met her yet.
I have not met anyone. This has been on our minds forever.
Her name is Jen Grace, and her tagline is the professional lesbian. But anyway, she has a company called Publish Your Purpose.
Okay.
And I think with that information, you can find her online.
Yeah. Will you email that to me as well?
Absolutely. But I'm going to have her on the show at some point. But I know a couple of people that she's helped. And she has a program that'll take you from scratch to writing it.
Oh, I love it. Yes, I do need that. I know I have something to write. I just don't, I don't know how to go about it. I would love to be in contact with her. Do you mind if I promote one more of our podcasts?
Oh, no, go right ahead.
Another one. It's called Sleepy Shorts, and it's short stories for bedtime. So how this came to be, people kept telling Mary and I, oh, you have the most soothing voices. I could fall asleep to them. They're so great. And we actually would listen to a different podcast to fall asleep to at night, which is just someone reading short stories. So we thought, well, why don't we try it? And so we started this podcast where we write a short story or people submit them to us, and we just read the story. And they're, about 15 minutes long. First, we walk them through sort of some relaxation techniques before bed. And then we read the story, and the story is detailed enough to make your brain focus on those details instead of focusing on everything you did wrong today, but boring enough that you fall asleep. And so we started the podcast, and it's picking up speed, and people are writing in and saying, I made it through about the first 5 minutes and I was sound asleep. And so it's a nice, boring podcast to listen to, just a nice, detailed, short story that'll help people to sleep. So again, it's called Sleepy Shorts.
I might have to try that.
Oh, please do. And let us know how it works. We're just starting a Sleepy Shorts for kids as well. So
fantastic.
Yeah, check it out.
I could have used that when I was a kid.
Gosh, me too.
I actually sleep a lot better than I did when I was young. Of course, it might have been because I laid awake imagining becoming a boy. But it's not because I want to be a boy. It's just that they got to do all the good stuff. I mean, when I was a kid, and even if you weren't a Mormon, girls didn't get to do much.
Yeah, no, you're right. I wanted to do what my brothers got to do, and I kept hoping I was going to grow up to be a boy. I really thought that when I was really young, that you grow up to be a boy if that's what you want. I
was going to be the first woman in the NFL.
Oh, I love it.
Until puberty hit, and I realized, no, that's not how it's going to work.
Oh, wow.
Well, we'll have to figure out how to get together again, since we are going to be in Atlanta at the same time, even though we won't be at the same event. So I'll be in touch with you, and we can figure that out.
Yeah, please do. I'll get you my phone number. We can text and find each other, and because I'd love to keep a relationship going. This is great.
I want to thank Shelly Johnson for taking the time to share her story with us. If you want to hear more from Shelly, be sure to check out her podcast, Latter Day Lesbian. I'd also love to hear your feedback about this episode or anything else about Grain Rainbows. You can write to me at grainrainbows@gmail.com. You can also submit voice feedback at speakpipe.com/Doc Artemis. Don't forget to visit the Grain Rainbows Facebook fan page. And if you want to join our private group, just click on the link that you'll see on the fan page and then answer a few brief questions. One reminder, everything posted in the group is totally private, but it's not a secret group. Your membership is not a secret. If you are at the stage where you still need a secret group, please email me at grainrainbows@gmail.com so I can help you find a group that's a better fit for you. The next episode of Grain Rainbows will come out on the first Monday of November, since I'm now moving to a once-a-month schedule. In the meantime, I hope you'll check out my other podcasts, Brain Science and Books and Ideas. Thanks again for listening. I look forward to talking with you again next month. Grain Rainbows is copyright Virginia Campbell, MD. You can copy this show to share it with others, but for any other uses or derivatives, please contact me at grainrainbows@gmail.com.